Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. So we'll be taking questions towards the end. So if you do have any questions, you can either raise your hand later on or pop them in the comment section and we'll read them out for you. It's up to you. And now over to Vijay.
Thank you, Rohana Mataji. Okay, so before we begin discussions, I hope you all recited on Tuesday or previous Tuesday, the Diwali's Tuesday, chapter 2 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam, the great book that we are discussing at this point in time. It is this book. If all of you can see it, this is Canto 1. So before we actually begin this chapter, we'll offer some prayers to the previous spiritual teachers so that actually we can understand, assimilate, and so that I can speak something which is in the line of disciplic succession, in the line of spiritual masters who have given the message as it is. So we'll begin the prayers. Those who know it can also recite with me. If you don't know it, you can attentively hear. Om Agyantimirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuronmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guruho Shri Yutaha Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Scha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabho Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Hitaniya Sadahari. One should chant the holy names of the Lord in the humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street, more tolerant than the tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige. One should be ready to offer all respect to others and expect none in return. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy names of the Lord constantly. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Shrinvatam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtanaha Hridayantasto Haya Bhadrani Vidunoti Shuhit Satam Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Jnanati Yashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayat Ahetukam Yasyam Vaishruyamananam Krishne Paramapurushe Bhaktir Utpadyate Pumsa Shoka Moha Bhaya Apaha. these were some invocation prayers which I just sang, and some of these invocation prayers uh, are part of this second chapter that we are going to discuss soon. Anyone remembers the theme of the second chapter, even remotely? Because I know it 2 weeks have passed now, so it might be very difficult to remember. Let me just summarize it for all of you, for the benefit of the hearers. In chapter 1, actually, the sages, they asked 6 questions to Suta Goswami. Suta Goswami is a very highly advanced transcendentalist who actually heard Srimad Bhagavatam directly from Sukdev Goswami. And Sukdev Goswami is the original presenter of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Suta Goswami was sitting in this assembly where Srimad Bhagavatam was actually spoken by Sukdev Goswami. And Suta Goswami was specially blessed by Lord Balram to actually be able to assimilate the knowledge. And so Suta Goswami is now presenting this knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam to 80,000 sages who have assembled in north of India, a place called Naimisharanya. And in Naimisharanya, Suta Goswami has been requested by the 80,000 assembled sages to speak to them Srimad Bhagavatam. And so on behalf of these 80,000 sages, there is one personality by the name Shaunak Rishi, who is going to ask questions to Suta Goswami. And in the first chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, Shaunak Rishi is asking questions to Suta Goswami. And does anyone remember those 6 questions? By chance? Even I don't remember all of them, but I remember at least 3 to 4 of them. So I've made a note. So what is the absolute and ultimate good for people in general? That was the first question. Isn't it a fabulous question? What is the absolute and ultimate good for people in general? And the second question was explain the essence of all scriptures for good of all living beings. So the sages are not asking, give me many things and I'll choose my options from those many things. Sages are fed up with those kinds of answers. So they are asking, actually, tell us the essence, tell us the direct essence of all the Vedic scriptures. And then question 3, why did Lord appear in the womb of Devaki as the son of Vasudeva? They wanted to know why the Supreme Lord actually appeared. So actually it shows that they wanted to hear about the Supreme Lord. They wanted to understand Supreme Lord by hearing about him. Then the question 4 was describes Lord's adventures in his various incarnations. So they wanted to understand, okay, Lord has appeared. What are his activities? What are his adventures, basically? And narrate the transcendental pastimes of the Lord's multiple incarnations. So that was the 5th question. So they wanted to learn more about the activities of the Lord. And then the 6th and last important question was, whom did the religious principles take shelter of after the Lord's departure from the material world? So after Krishna had left, they wanted to know, where did the religious principles have taken shelter? Because after the Lord goes away, it was assumed that there will be a lot of chaos. So where does righteousness, all the religious principle, where does it go? Where does it take shelter? So those were the 6 questions at the end of the first chapter, and then started the second chapter, divine and divinity, divine and divine service. So in this chapter, mainly Suta Goswami, who's put these questions, he first and foremost starts by paying obeisances to his spiritual master, which is Shukdev Goswami, because he actually heard Srimad Bhagavatam first in the assembly where Shukdev Goswami was speaking it to Parikshit Maharaj. So he begins by glorifying Shukdev Goswami, and he briefly speaks about Shukdev Goswami, saying that Shukdev Goswami actually was a great transcendentalist who was already at a level of Brahman realization. Brahman realization is a stage where you understand that you are not this body, you are the spirit soul. How many of us in this assembly understand that we are not this body? If someone comes and pinches us really hard, pulls our ears really hard, like we will be almost immediately in the body consciousness. And Sukdev Goswami was already in the womb of his mother. He was already Brahman realized. And he was not coming out of his mother's tummy. And Vyasdev, the father, became really worried. And so Vyasdev understood that this is not an ordinary soul. He is already very highly spiritually advanced. So let me tell him about the pastimes of Krishna. So he was 16 years old, and he was still in the womb of the mother. Of course, that age was a different age, which we will again study in Srimad Bhagavatam scientifically. In that age, the lifespan of human beings was not 100 years, but it was 1,000 years. Even as you read Bible, you will read accounts where different people are mentioned who had ages who lived as long as 400 years. So transition from that age to this age, a lot of things are lost in this translation. But we will get into those details as we continue to read Srimad Bhagavatam, because Bhagavatam, it tells you about these fantastic details. So Shukdev Goswami was still in the womb of his mother, not willing to come out. And then his father, Vyasadev, he started to recite to him Srimad Bhagavatam. And Srimad Bhagavatam is so sweet. It is so sweet. When you eat, take a very crude example. I like gulab jamuns, for example. Gulab jamuns are sweet balls, right? After I eat one gulab jamun, the taste buds are really enlivened. Then I'm looking for the second one, and then after the second one, heart has just started to feel some happiness. And then it's the third one which goes in and it makes me full. But sometimes I think, why can I not eat like 10 and 20 and not have the problem of becoming full? And so this is the limitation of the material world. But Srimad Bhagavatam is not like this. Srimad Bhagavatam, you can read again and again and again and again, and eat it so many times, the taste only increases. It never goes down. For a sincere spiritualist, the taste, you will see it, because it gives you so many deeper meanings which you never manage to capture in one reading or two reading or three reading or four reading. Every small pastime it is a movie. It is a visual movie, and in a movie you have many characters. But the beauty of Srimad Bhagavatam is all the characters in the movie of Srimad Bhagavatam are alive. For example, a tree is a living entity, an insect, an ant, the characters themselves, the flowing river, the cows, even the grass, they are all living creatures. So Shukdev Goswami, when he heard this Srimad Bhagavatam for the first time from the mouth of his father, he immediately opened his eyes up in the womb of his mother. Initially, he didn't want it to come out in this material world where we have to pay electricity bills and go to schools and do the jobs, because it's not very pleasant in this material world. Everyone has to go through birth, death, old age, and disease. No one is spared from these four problems. But as soon as he heard Srimad Bhagavatam, he just came out of the womb and he didn't stop. He started to run straight away into the forest, trying to look for Krishna, because he has just heard about Krishna. So his father Vyasdev started running behind him. And as he was running behind him, he was shouting for his son. And the trees were echoing back the separation that Vyasadev was feeling from his son. His son Shukdev Goswami was such a pure soul that from every step he took, any living entity in that step, they felt the purity of this saint. And because the saint was moving away from them, they were crying in their hearts. Because when you really meet a pure soul, when you really meet a saint, you just want their association. You want to be with them. You want to spend time with them. You want to hear them. You want to associate with them. And when they go away, you feel separation. And this was happening with the trees, with the birds, with the people around. As soon as Shukdev Goswami was passing through the scene, they felt immense ecstasy simply by seeing Shukdev Goswami. And this is an impact of a powerful spiritual personality. When they are present, their presence makes everything auspicious. And the spiritual people who are sincerely practicing spirituality for a number of years, they can sense the presence of a pure soul in the vast majority of people. Because the presence of a pure soul, it increases the spiritual energy of the whole place. It uplifts every single person. So everyone was feeling separation from Sukdev Goswami as he was leaving. Even the trees were feeling the separation. So when Vyasadev was calling out for his son, he heard that even the trees were calling out for his son. So every single living entity was calling out for Shukdev Goswami. And Shukdev Goswami was just, walking very fast. And Vyasadev, his father, was just trying to catch up. And it is said that in one of the understandings, it is said that Vyasadev had many disciples. So he had sent his disciples, and he had specifically instructed his disciples that Shukdev Goswami will not stop until and unless you are reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. So they were all chanting the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. And when Shukdev Goswami heard these chants from the disciples of his father, he actually stopped to hear them again. This is actually the state of a transcendentalist. As soon as they hear about Krishna, and this is what is mentioned in chapter 2, which will come across, is in the absolute advanced stage of spiritual life. When you hear about the Supreme Lord, your ears, they are pulled away from you. You are not in control of your organs and senses. They are fully pulled into the direction of Krishna, even at the slightest relationship with his holy name or his activities, and specifically his pastimes. So then this is how the Shukdev Goswami, who originally spoke the Srimad Bhagavatam, he came back and then learned Srimad Bhagavatam completely from his father Vyasadev. And then we hear that, Sukdev Goswami was traveling, Parikshit Maharaj was being cursed, which will come to at later chapters. And then they meet together at the banks of Ganga. And at the banks of Ganga, there is this assembly wherein Parikshit Maharaj asks questions to Sukdev Goswami. Here in this chapter, Suta Goswami, who was also one of the members in that great assembly where Shukdev Goswami was speaking it to Parikshit Maharaj, he is now repeating Srimad Bhagavatam to 80,000 sages somewhere in the north of India in a place called Naimisharanya. So what were those 80,000 sages doing in Naimisharanya? Those 80,000 sages were in great anxiety, wanting to do some benefit for human society. They were trying out different spiritual processes. And they were very frustrated. Their faces had become dark from fire sacrifices. The soot that comes out from the fire. They had all become very dark with the soot, and they were exhausted and they were tired. But when Suta Goswami entered the whole arena, the energy of the arena was uplifted. Because Suta Goswami, again, a very advanced soul, and immediately they asked him, okay, amongst us, we think the most qualified person is Shaunak Rishi, and Shaunak Rishi is most qualified, and so he should ask our heart's question to Suta Goswami. And the first question was, what is of ultimate benefit, to the all human society? So this question itself is so broad that you can understand how a heart of saintly person is. A saintly person is not thinking about himself or his family or just his friends. They are asking questions for entire humanity. And they knew that entire humanity includes not just human beings of all types. It includes even living entities which are not human beings. So ants, plants, all animals, aquatics, every single living entity. So they are asking, what is the ultimate good for people in general? And in this chapter from verses, Suta Goswami, before he starts answering these questions, he first pays obeisances to his spiritual teacher, which was Shukdev Goswami. And hence, when we start reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, or when we are hearing about Srimad Bhagavatam, we should first remember our spiritual teachers, and we should pay obeisances to them and seek their blessings. And after he has, paid obeisances to his spiritual master, he still is feeling very grateful in his heart. So he next pays obeisances to Naranarayan Rishis and Mother Saraswati. Mother Saraswati is goddess of learning. She can bless you with spiritual science. I remember when I was back in India and I was studying as a student, on the 31st night, everyone would go out to booze because the new year is about to start. For some reason, which I can't understand, but I can relate to now, I would take out all my books and I would pray to my books. It was all material education, but for some reason I was praying to them, and I was actually praying to Mother Saraswati, because she is the goddess of learning. She can actually bless you and empower you to understand subject matter which ordinary people wouldn't understand. So here, Sutta Goswami is paying obeisances to Naranarayan Rishi and Mother Saraswati. Mother Saraswati has two counterparts, the material counterpart and the spiritual counterpart. So here, Sutta Goswami is actually paying obeisances to the spiritual counterpart of Mother Saraswati. And then, of course, he wanted to pay obeisances to Vyasadeva, who is actually the original compiler of this greatest literature. And after that, he congratulates all those 80,000 sages. And he says that, wow, you have asked me the excellent questions. These are the best of the questions. He says, I have been justly questioned by you. Only questions related to Lord Krishna are capable of benefiting all and completely satisfy the self. So, if we were to speak of any material topic, take for example, I work US times and I'm coming out of the meetings. I've been in meetings since 1 o'clock this afternoon, back to back, with 10 minutes break only throughout the day. And actually, I'm very tired from all of those meetings. And this is the case with most people. You would be tired from material topics. But when it comes to topics about spiritual life, when it comes to the topic about Krishna, then you feel that energy within you, because the energy is not yours. The energy is coming from transcendental platform. It doesn't come from the material platform. The energy that comes from the material platform is diminishing. And therefore, there are laws of conversion of energy, and there are laws of losses of energy. Basically, it says that energy is never lost. It's just converted from one form to another. But in spiritual life, we are saying that energy is created. It's not that the energy is there and the energy is converted. The energy gets created when you associate with the unlimited source of energy, which is the Supreme Lord. So this is what Shukdev Goswami, Sutta Goswami is thanking them, that only questions related to Lord Krishna are capable of benefiting all, not just few people, all. And they will completely satisfy the self. And then the Sutta Goswami, he goes on to answer the questions. And then comes a very famous verse, which is no ordinary verse. If anyone, just a very layman, if they read this verse, they will appreciate that what this verse and what this book is speaking is beyond sectarianism, is beyond divisions, is beyond divisive attitudes, and it's actually higher than the highest. And they would rarely come about this kind of knowledge in many of the even religious books, which generally don't explain all of these things in detail. But Srimad Bhagavatam begins like this. It says, Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktir adhokshaje ahetukiya pratihata yayatma suprasiddhati. So it says bhakti unto the supreme occupation for all humanity is that by which men can attain unmotivated and uninterrupted, loving, devotional service unto the Lord. That completely satisfies the self. Very heavy words used here. First and foremost, if someone speaks about unmotivated, there's most of the times the complete business of religiosity is through motivation. We go to God, or we want God to fulfill something for us. Either he should give us heaven, or he should give us hell, or he should give us material comforts. All of that in the very beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam is getting rejected. That you have to, the supreme occupation or the supreme dharma of a human being is actually to attain unmotivated service, that which is not motivated by anything, no personal gain, no altruism, no philanthropy, no good health, not even spiritual progress. And that is a difficult one to take. Not even spiritual progress. Completely unmotivated. Completely unmotivated. For a lot of people, one cannot survive without motivation. They ask this question, so what is your motivation for getting out of the bed every morning and go to work? That is one of the interview questions I ask, and I've seen many others ask. But here in spiritual life, we are saying here that there has to be completely no motivation in serving the Lord. It should be unmotivated. You just serve the Lord out of love. And it should be uninterrupted. It should not be that, okay, we will do it now, then we will not do it tomorrow, and then we'll do it when we feel like. No, the devotional service to the Lord should be uninterrupted. And it should not be artificially uninterrupted. Like some people can force themselves in a kind of a routine, but trust me, the routine and force can only work so long. It will die out its natural death in few days, few months, few years. It won't last. So what is it that gives us this uninterrupted attitude for loving service? We will discuss that in a moment. But then, and the next word, it says loving devotional service. If something is, and therefore it is qualified loving devotional service, because if it's not loving, it will not be uninterrupted. The mother loves the child. And therefore, when the baby is really hungry for milk in the night, and the mother has worked really hard the entire day, still she wakes up in the night and resolves the hunger of the baby. That she could that is called love, because she will not avoid it because she loves the child. So this is the crudest example of the material world, is the loving service of a mother to the baby, to the child. So that loving element has to be there for devotional service, and only then it can become unmotivated and uninterrupted. Initially, when we all start on this path, we have a lot of problems. We have motivations and our services are interrupted because our mind is not steady. And so there is a journey to this step, to this verse, to actually being able to realize this verse, there is a journey. And this journey, the sincerity and the seriousness and the amount of time and energy we put into this journey, that will decide how much we have come closer to this standard, because this is a really high standard. Whatever I'm saying to you now, you will realize when you follow the process for a long period of time, it's a really high standard, even for people who have been following the process for very many years. Unmotivated, uninterrupted, loving devotional service. And only that can actually completely satisfy the self. If there is anything else, it won't satisfy the self, because then there will be some motivation. If the motivation is not fulfilled, then you will not be happy. If it's not uninterrupted, there are instances where people have been determined to do things, whether their health is good or whether their health is not good, whether they have fever at night or whether they don't have fever, they will just do it. And not just out of duty, out of love for someone. And I was giving you the example of the mother. So actually this loving devotional service is called bhakti, or the bhakti yoga. Bhakti literally means devotion, but the actual form of bhakti, when it becomes from noun to verb, is called devotional service. Otherwise it just remains a word. Verse 7 actually says that Lord Krishna, he enables one to immediately acquire causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. When you actually start in the devotional process, then we might be after knowledge, or we might be wanting to become perfect in our actions. I remember when I was very young, everything I did had some mistakes in it. And no matter whatever work I did, it always had a lot of mistakes in it. And I used to always think, when will I become perfect in doing my activities? So, this was constant bother in my mind. And now, after so many years, I can understand my desires were impure. Even on the spiritual path, the desires were impure. Although in the material sense, it's good to become perfect, but it was not the highest desire. My desires could have been even better, but it was something in middle. And similarly, sometimes we just want knowledge. We want to know more and more. We want to find out details. But if just getting a pure knowledge, if that is directed towards Krishna, if just doing your activities, if that is directed towards Krishna, then that will have some element of bhakti in it, because there is an element of Krishna into it. So even knowledge and even the activities, they can be dovetailed for bhakti. So right now we are in our jobs, we lead lives, we have families, we have to pay bills, we are responsible citizens in the society. But if we do all of these activities as service to the Supreme Lord, then basically these same activities become dovetailed towards the Supreme, and therefore they become classified, and they are classified as bhakti. So bhakti can be done in isolation, but important point about bhakti is bhakti doesn't need you to be artificially imposing situations on yourself, as many other processes generally require. You might have heard of people who go to Himalayas to do yoga, meditation, and then be just there, cut off from the entire world. Whereas bhakti says that you have to become saint while you are living in the world. So Jesus also mentioned many times that, be in the world, not of this world. So this is the process of bhakti. Bhakti is then further detailed out in the verses. But we'll because this chapter has some of my favorite verses, I wanted to recite them. We have so short of time. Any questions so far? No. Okay. So I take it that everyone has understood everything that I've spoken so far. Because if you don't understand, then either I'm a bad teacher or you all are sleeping. But I'm hoping you're not sleeping. You're all awake. Further in this chapter, the description is given that only bhakti should be what we want to gain from our work. And there are some very high level of statements which this chapter makes. Let me just read some of the occupational activities a man performs according to his own positions are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead. So he says that whatever activities you're doing, if you are not having time for spiritual life, if you don't make 10 minutes for yourself to stop in your life and close your eyes and remember the Supreme Creator, the Supreme Father, the Supreme Mother, the God, the Supreme Lover of the soul, then any activity that we are doing is just labor for life. And Bhagavatam, because it's such a high book, it doesn't cheat you. It doesn't tell you something which will be pleasant to your ears. This is the only book which basically, after reading, you feel that you have been stripped away from your coverings of ego. You have been stripped away by your mental understandings, because it is very direct book. And therefore, someone who reads this book systematically will become saintly, because it tells all occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. So how many of us are working and taking salaries, and then whatever salaries are coming, we are trying to enjoy with our money? At least I am. So, and this book is directly telling me that I am foolish. And I'm very happy to hear that. It says all occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. Furthermore, according to the sages, one who is engaged in ultimate occupational service should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. Which means if you are trying to attract material resources, whether it be money, land, whatever it be, they all should be used completely for spiritual realization. Now, I am guilty to not using everything for spiritual realization. But this is the path of bhakti, is that you start somewhere and then you move in this path to ultimately reach a stage where you have everything for the Supreme Lord. And therefore, you will see in this movement, you will see monks who have completely dedicated their lives. And, they have no expectation of them. But also another beauty is this movement doesn't expect you to be monk in saffron clad. You can be a saintly person while being at home with your mind completely detached from the material activities. It's not saying that you don't do those activities, but it's saying you dedicate the results of those activities. And in that way, you will become purified in your mind. When you perform something, then there is a tendency to become, if there is success, then there is a tendency to become proud. And if there is a failure, there is a tendency to hanker for better results. Isn't that the case? If there is success, then you become proud. Oh, I did this well, or team did this well. But if there is a failure, then you feel depressed, and then there is hankering for more. And this book is telling you that you can continue to do the same activity. You can still fail and you can still be successful, but you have to take away that pride. You have to take away that depression, and you have to take away those hankerings. And once you take away those elements, then then you offer the results of this activity to the Supreme Lord. And that's how you spiritualize any of these activities. Life desire should not be directed towards sense gratification. One should desire only a healthy life or self-preservation. So devotees or people who are on this path of bhakti, they want to self-preserve. So you don't do bhakti and become a poor man, and then everyone is criticizing you that, oh, now he is become a poor man, now he can't even do his bhakti, can't even chant his rounds, or doesn't have time to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. So I congratulate you all, because you took some time out for hearing the messages of the Lord. Because if we don't do even that much, we don't study the scriptures, we don't take time to hear about the Supreme Lord, then it's only a useless labor for existence. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance. So from 11th onwards, verses 11th onwards, it's going to actually explain what the Supreme Lord is. There are few verses, few things that I want to discuss. That in further verses in this chapter, it tells you the process of Bhakti Yoga. And again, this is very enlightening, even for people who have been practicing this for many years. It is something that hits the heart. Even today, even after many years, you are reading the same chapter, it will hit the heart, because it's very powerful. So from verses 16 to 21, it goes into detailing the... So if you have Bhagavatam in front of you, you can open these verses. Text 16 of the chapter 2. I'll read the English. O twice-born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vices, all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudev. So really, if someone wants to become really devoted, really saintly, really want to develop saintly qualities, what they have to do? They have to first find a devotee, pure devotee who they can serve. In the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, In the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there are descriptions of many hellish planets. Okay, someone has question. Someone has raised their hands.
Hello, Prabhu. Sorry. What does the twice-born sages, what does twice-born mean?
Twice born really means that someone who is like a Brahmana or a Vaishnav, the first birth is given by the father and the mother. That's the first birth. And the reason the word twice born is used is because the second birth happens when someone dedicates their life to the spiritual master.
Okay, thank you.
They get a new birth. Thank you. So essentially, in the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a lot of descriptions of hellish planets. What happens if you are drinking liquor all the time? What happens if you have cheated someone? What happens if you have said lie to someone? What happens to you if you have done illicit relationships? There is in-depth details of about which planets these people go to, what happens to them, what kinds of punishment is meted out to them. And hearing all of this, Parikshit Maharaj, he is in great worry because he was a king of a state. A king of a state is like a father, and a father's natural compassionate mood is they worry about their children, even the naughty children, even the ones who are really bad. So Parikshit Maharaj is the king. He was father to all of his subjects. And he, after hearing this situation of the people who do bad things, he became very concerned. And he told to Shukdev Goswami that actually, I have seen from my experience that every time you punish someone, they go through their punishment term, but as soon as they finish their punishment term, they still again continue to commit the crime. The tendency to do the crime doesn't go away. It's seated in their heart, but they are just not doing crime out of fear. So please, can you tell me, how can they stop crime completely? How can this tendency to do crime go away from the core of their heart? Because so far, whatever you said to me, it doesn't help me, because my children, my subjects, they are still suffering in hellish conditions because they are continuing to do this crime even after punishment. And the answer that comes out after all these 6 cantos, which is quite intense study actually, and the beginning of 6th canto, the answer is given, which is this: by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. And actually, greatest service is done, because that has the capacity to root out the seeds of the tendencies to do bad things. And we might think, oh, we are good citizens, we don't have any bad things within us, but actually we cultivate, we harbor lust, we harbor greed, anger, envy, illusion, and pride. So these exist in all of our hearts. And these vices can only be rooted out from the core of the heart by rendering service to a pure devotee of the Lord. So by such service, what really happened? One gains affinity for the hearing the messages of Lord. If you do some sincere devotional service to a pure saintly person, then your desire will be increased about to hear about the Supreme Lord, because that saintly person is hearing constantly about Supreme Lord. They say that birds of the same feather flock together. If you are with a saintly person, his saintliness is going to rub on you. And the saint is constantly remembering the Supreme, because in their hearts, Lord is arrested in their hearts. The Lord is constantly in their hearts. And so everything they speak touches the Lord's body, and then whatever words come out of their mouth, that has a transcendental impact on you. Because I was trying to research how different it is when you sit in front of the person and hear a discourse, as opposed to this format, which is on a YouTube. And the great difference, which Srimad Bhagavatam told me after many years of study, and it's mentioned in the 5th canto, that when you sit in front of a saintly person in the same assembly, then the Supreme Lord, who is in the core of the heart of that saintly person, the air that is flowing by breathing, that touches the Supreme Lord's body. It comes out from his mouth and merges into the atmosphere. And then the hearers are sitting in that assembly. It goes, falls on them, the dust which has touched the lotus feet of the Lord. And this is what brings about transformation. Otherwise, we could be hearing so many discourses, we don't become saints. We have to become saints by listening these discourses. Otherwise, we could be hearing them for very, very long time, but the transformation is not there. Only information is there. So I was really worried, because then how can one spiritually progress if they are on this platform, on YouTube, on Zoom? And to my great satisfaction, I heard another thing in Srimad Bhagavatam is that if someone speaks exactly as it is from the holy books, then because they are resounding the vibrations which has been transcoded in these holy books, anyone hearing those vibrations, they are hearing Shabda Brahman, or proofs of the same thing which has been transcribed. It's like Einstein saying E is equal to mc square. It's a formula. Anyone who repeats the formula or sees the formula or use the formula is actually translating the same fact which Einstein had codified many, many years ago. So if someone is repeating as it is, scriptures, and anyone hearing it as it is, the scriptures, they're hearing the same sound vibrations which have been codified. And for such people, there will be benefit. So in essence, if someone speaks directly from the scriptures as it is, and if someone very saintly, if you're sitting in front of them and directly listening from them, then your heart will be purified of the accumulated dust. So what Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, he defines these 6 anarthas: lust, greed, anger, envy, illusion, pride, and they initially cause unsteadiness in devotional life. And he's described it like this. It says, first one is utsaha mahi, enthusiasm indicating pride. So there is enthusiasm, and in that enthusiasm there is a lot of pride. There is enthusiasm to serve everyone, but as they are serving, you will see a fragment of pride in their service. So I did this, I ran this, I did a project, I accomplished this, or I was a part of a team and my team was the best. So there is this element of pride that goes everywhere. Pride in personal devotional achievements causes beginning devotees to immaturely think that they, unlike others, have already mastered everything. So in the initial stages, you do things, you do things right, you cultivate pride, and then you start to think, oh, actually, I've got it. I'm there. I've got the essence of the whole devotional life. Many years ago in Manchester, one saint came from Mayapur and he was teaching a class. And in that class, being an academic student, I was able to remember everything that he spoke in the previous session, which was a week ago. So he was really amazed that I remembered everything as it is a week ago. And then I was telling him that, yes, I got it actually. I understood it. I was trying to explain to him, I'm really advanced, is what I was trying to convey out to him. But in a moment, he told me that wait for few more years and you will realize how much not advanced you are. And now, after quite few years in this devotional practice, I really understand how much not advanced I am. Because the more you advance, the more you get a vision to see. The more you get the vision to see, more less foolish you become. So this is what here it is saying, that there is initially enthusiasm indicating pride. Pride in personal devotional achievements causes beginning devotees to immaturely think that they, unlike others, have already mastered everything. Then the another anartha is ghanattarala, which means moving unsteadily between diligence and negligence. Such a devotee chants his rounds one day, the next day he is too busy. One day he reads scripture, the next he is too sleepy. This is called Ghanattara, right? It makes you move unsteadily between diligence and negligence. Then there is Vyuddha Vikalpa, which is flickering determination. Should I remain a householder or should I become renounced? Should I enjoy my youth and thereby fulfill all my tendencies for sense gratification? Or should I practice renunciation now? Those suffering from Vyuddha Vikalpa will offer quotations from the Shastra that confirm each choice. Such people, they could be in any walk of life, but every time, you ask them a question as to why they were doing this thing, as to why they had not married or why they had married, or, why they're getting into renounced order of life, they will quote it from the Shastra to justify that what I'm doing is right. Because the scriptures that are called Shastras, the scriptures have many things in it because it's really broad. But really, one who is saint, the difference between a saint and someone who is still trying to be saintly is that the saint knows how to apply the scripture. The application of the scripture is the most difficult thing. You can understand the whole of the scripture, you can read the whole of the scripture, but you might not really know anything about the scripture. And that's the beauty of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is a gift. It has to be given to you by the Supreme Lord himself. This vision, this movie that you see of the pastimes, it has to be given to you by the Supreme Lord. And once he has given to you, he will empower you to apply it. And the application is the most difficult part of the scripture. The fourth one is Vishay Shangara, an ongoing struggle with sense pleasure. Seeing themselves being carried away by the waves of material enjoyment, devotees firmly resolve, from now on, I'll take shelter of Krishna's holy name. Then try to renounce everything and to simply chant. But their practice is intermittent and they are forced by their own nature to enjoy what they have renounced. I was giving you an example of gulab jamun, sweet balls. And I might say today, from tomorrow onwards, no sweet balls for me. But unfortunately, I know that 1 year down the line in a birthday party, when they serve it out and the friends would be there and say, oh, why are you not taking it? You used to eat 5, 10. This is prasadam, this is no problem with it. This is offered to Krishna. Why don't you take it? And I would be very tempted. I'll just go ahead and take it because all their arguments and reasonings were correct. My heart's desire was to eat. I just fulfilled it under the pretext of getting backing from someone to eat it. So this is how Vishaya Sangara is we are constantly flickering. There is a struggle for us to give up the sense gratification and actually the desires. And then there is Niyam Akshama, inability to improve devotional practices. From today on, I will chant 64 rounds. From today on, I will see the deities 3 times a day. I'll visit temple 3 times a day. From today on, I will read a chapter of Bhagavad Gita daily. Despite such good intentions and even vows, these devotees cannot increase or improve their practices. So this is the verses are speaking about the process of devotional service, and this specific one is at the stage of Anartha Aparadh, Anartha Apagamam. This is the 7th stage. There are 14 stages in the devotional service. Usually the scriptures quotes, most of the times the scriptures are quoting 7, but the spiritual teachers and acharyas are further quoting sub divisions in the progress towards spiritual life. There are 14 stages, and this one is basically the Anartha Apagamam. It's the most difficult of all the stages. And then there is Taranga Ragini, delighting in the material facilities that bhakti produces. Once you start doing bhakti, then there will be a lot of material facilities you will get. There will be immediate result of doing bhakti is you will attain peace. And when you're peaceful, then slowly the material facilities will start to come. And the devotee can be completely inundated in this beauty of bhakti. The engaging nature of bhakti attracts possession, followers, and wealth. This is generally happens to anyone who does bhakti properly, is that it attracts possession. The devotees will start to know you, or the places you work on, they will know you. It attracts possession, it will attract followers, and it also attracts wealth. Devotees become enamored by these small waves in the ocean of bhakti. So we become enamored by these small waves of material benefits that we start to get when bhakti comes. Someone may ask, why do we get these? And the answer is given that when you start the process of bhakti yoga, then material energy wants to entice you back into your usual world. Usual world was we were working very hard to get these things. Now, in path of bhakti yoga, we are saying, okay, no more material energy. I want to start moving towards spiritual energy. If you have been serving a master very well for so many years, will that master let you go off easily? No, because we have served them so nicely for such a long time. Similarly, we have served material energy for such a long time. We have been working very hard to be good people, good bosses, to progress in the career ladder, get this new house, get iPhone, 14 is it now? iPhone 14, just everything that's possible materially. And we have been like a laborer, and material energy is giving us carrot everywhere. Okay, just work 4 more months in this job, work really hard, overtime and everything, and maybe you'll get next promotion. So there is always a carrot in the material energy. Okay, I'll just do this much more and maybe I'll get a big relief. Suddenly in spiritual life, you say, okay, I'll pause all of those things. I'll first focus my energy to Krishna, to spiritual life. And as soon as you do that, the material energy sees, oh, this is my, my customer. How can I let it go? So the material energy then entices you. You will start getting more comforts, more material energy, more wealth, more resources over a period of time in the bhakti process, if you do it properly. And this is actually the test of a devotee, that whether you are still wanting to enjoy material energy. Krishna is seeing very carefully to you, at you, on this stage of bhakti. Krishna, he gives everything and then he watches how the devotee will act. What will he or she do with this? Will they get blown off by all this opulence that I have given to them? Or they are willing to still renounce all of those and still keep me as first priority? And the general measurement of this is how much time you give to Krishna. You might still get wealth and everything, but your heart and mind is still on Krishna. And sometimes you are completely blown off in this. You get big positions, and we have seen many devotees, they come to the movement, but after some time, when they come to the movement, they were really distressed. A lot of problems in life, a lot of health issues or family problems or, girlfriend, boyfriend issues, many issues. And after few years in bhakti, they are very happy. And then they get settled in lives, they get the jobs or they get good health or whatever they wanted. They're very peaceful, happy. And in this peaceful and happiness, they don't need Krishna anymore. Krishna was the order supplier for a time being. I'm happy in my world, so there's no need of Krishna. So this is, and Krishna tests such devotees also. And, those who, and that's why it said bhakti process is difficult, because it will really test you out. Krishna doesn't let every single person to come to him unless the person is really ready to come to Krishna. So there will be a lot of tests like that. So there are these 6 anarthas, and then there are these 14 processes mentioned in this chapter. And then most important thing is said that by regular attendance in classes of Bhagavatam, this is 1.2.18, and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. All these 6 things we just discussed, the anarthas, lust, greed, anger, envy, illusion, pride, and these weaknesses of the heart, desire to enjoy material energy, not able to keep vows and promises, taking pride in enthusiasm, in doing services, and, becoming like an egoistic person, becoming unsteady. All these problems, they are the problems which are rooted into the heart. And all of this will disappear. How? By regular attendance in classes of Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotees. All that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Now, it's almost 9 o'clock. Now it's over. Oh, sorry, it's over 9. I needed another few minutes. Do I have that luxury, Dharmendra Prabhu?
Yes, please go ahead. We have one question, but if anyone wants to raise any more questions, please either raise your hands after the class or put them on the comments, please. Thank you, Prabhuji. Please
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
Okay, so mainly Prabhupada, there's a lot of stress on hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, extreme stress on hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, and then serving a pure devotee. If you constantly hear Srimad Bhagavatam and actually don't do any service to the pure devotee, the effect of Srimad Bhagavatam will not be there. When you eat food, you have to chew the food, but then that food has to be completely assimilated into your system. So it's really critical that we serve some pure devotees. Now, someone might say, oh, I'm already hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, I'm already chanting my rounds, so I'm doing my service. And that's true. You're doing the service at the primary level. This is the most basic service. Hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and chanting the holy names of the Lord. And wherever possible, please explain it to others. Then that cycle of service is completed. Poonam Mataji, I'll come to you in a moment. I've not forgotten you. I'm just finishing this and then I'll be happy to answer any questions. So Prabhupada is mentioning in purport that, service, devotional service is really important. And hearing Srimad Bhagavatam is both should happen. Just hearing Bhagavatam and not doing any service, and just doing service and not hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, they both are bad. In the temple, over the many years, I would speak for myself. I would love doing a lot of services, and to show off, I would also read some books and quote some verses. Was that transforming my heart? No, it was making me even a worse person, because what I was cultivating inside was false ego, feeding it over many years. Imagine how big and brutal it can become if you really then see the false ego face to face. But Srimad Bhagavatam can get you that vision. Srimad Bhagavatam, if you hear it constantly, you will be completely purified from the core of your heart. The desires to enjoy will slowly start to go away. Prabhupada says that, in the material world, people are just getting married and then they have many children, and then the governments have to implement family planning. But for devotees, for one who is actually hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and doing some devotional service, there is no need of family planning, because for such a person, their consciousness and attention is to progress on the spiritual path. And so they are automatically detached, because this is one of the side effects of reading Bhagavatam. You become detached from everything. If you continue systematically to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, the pastimes are extremely powerful. I was reading about Bali Maharaj, which comes in the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And, he has everything that he had, he gave it to the Lord. And the Lord then is joking with him, said that you told me that you will give me 3 steps of land, but you have only given me 2. Actually, you have cheated me. And this great saintly person, he said that you are right. My promise that I made to you is not getting fulfilled, but I'll not let it become untrue. I will still make it true, but I don't want to deceive you, because I fear most, the thing that I fear most is actually giving a false promise. And so you keep your 3rd step on my head. I'm happy to die. You keep your 3rd step on, but I don't want to, not fulfill my promise. And in that state, Lord had arrested him, and he was making fun of him. I'm using that term because he's literally, Krishna says that, oh, at last I have been cheated. The Supreme Lord says, at last I have been cheated. And actually he was trying, he deceived Bali Maharaj, but the Supreme Lord was saying, I have been cheated. But you have to go so deep into understanding what Lord is really trying to say, how he breaks the false pride of his devotee, and how then Bali Maharaj, in spite of all these conditions, adverse situations, he's being said that Nashta Shriyam, all his opulence was destroyed, but he was Tirap Pragnam. It means he was determined in his determination. He was unflinching in his determination. He had been taken away everything from him. He was willing to die, but he wanted to serve the Lord. When you hear examples of such people, and when you slowly go through the verses in your own study and see what he's saying, how he's acting, how he's behaving, then then you meditate upon this constantly, then in the day-to-day life, there is this process of purification of the heart. You also want to be like this person. You also don't want to cheat anyone. You also want to become determined in your life for the service of the Lord. And you also want to become a devotee of the Lord who will always serve the Lord in a loving devotional service. When you constantly hear such pastimes, this is when the impurities, the weaknesses of the heart, the frailties of human life, you understand all of these things, and slowly, they start to disappear. And finally, last point is that in Srimad Bhagavatam, in this chapter specifically, is that one should only worship Krishna or Krishna's expansions. One should not worship any demigods. In the Indian context, the demigods are like sun god, the moon god. If you come to the Western concepts, then you have Zeus, you have, many other Zoroastrian gods. And so one should not worship any demigods, and one should only worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because the worshippers of the demigods, they only get temporary results. They don't get full results. Whereas the worshippers of Krishna, they actually understand the meaning of liberation, and they are the only ones who can get liberation. And Prabhupada is he's saying that most of the world is in this situation where they are worshipping the demigods for getting something from them. When they are materially needing something, then you end up worshipping demigod. Because when you worship the Supreme Lord, one of his names is Hari, and Hari means one who takes away everything. So when you start worshipping the Supreme Lord, just be careful. If your worship is really genuine, really sincere, and really serious, there is a possibility that he might like you so much that he will take everything away from you. Although that doesn't happen generally for normal people, for normal devotees, I should say. But for some devotees, he's so merciful on them. He's so much wanting them. He will take away everything from them. In a moment, their life collapses and they have no option but to think only of Krishna and surrender their lives to Krishna. And there are many such examples I've seen personally in my life, of devotees in ISKCON, in Bhaktivedanta Manor in ISKCON London. They have been brought by the Lord to his lotus feet because they did something. Maybe they were very simple in their hearts. Maybe they were, having all the good qualities that Lord really want to have in a devotee. So therefore, the devotees of the Lord slowly, gradually over a period of time, they want to give up all the bad things of their heart. They want to stop their material activities, and they want to spiritualize all their activities. So therefore, not everyone comes to worship Krishna. And Prabhupada is saying that the devotees should always worship only Krishna. They should not worship any demigods for material desires, for material fulfillment. And only then you could be worshipping the divine, because nothing else is called divine. And now there are many. So then Bhagavatam 1.2.21 says, thus the knot in the heart is pierced and all misgivings are cut to pieces. The chain of fruitive actions is terminated when one sees the self as the master. That one sees the self, then he can really understand that I am the owner of this body. I'm not this body. I'm the spirit soul, but I'm the owner of this body. And I'm really the servant of the Supreme Lord. And this is exactly what Prahlad Maharaj is saying in the 6th canto, that by serving the Supreme Lord, O Narsinghadev, please, Hriday Granthi. This is called Hriday, knot of the heart, Hriday Granthi. He says, please, somehow or other, break these knots which are there in my heart. And, only by your causeless mercy, you can break this knot of the heart. And this is what Bhagavatam does. And this knot of the heart is actually the many misgivings of love, lust, greed, anger, illusion, pride, the weaknesses of the heart, all these things, and they're very difficult to overcome. But by constantly hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and serving the pure devotees of the Lord, this is the secret. And this secret is repeatedly mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, but we are very fortunate it's mentioned right at the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam also. One can be completely freed from all the fruitive actions. Yeah, then that's really the conclusion of the second chapter, is that don't worship Lord Shiva, don't worship Lord Brahma, come to the mode of goodness and worship only the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This chapter also details out that someone who worships, like Shiva, they are in the mode of tamas, which is mode of ignorance. Worshippers of Lord Brahma in the mode of passion, and then there is further descriptions of Kali and everything else, and what modes they fall in. Like worship of Lord Ganesha is like in the combination of mode of passion and goodness. It's not in the pure mode of goodness. Ganesha is very famous in the world, so I'm just mentioning him out specifically. And so eventually this chapter finishes with a request that, don't worship the demigods, please worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead only. With that, I like to stop. Again, my sincere apologies. I'm not able to do justice because this chapter has so many beautiful verses, and each verse will take like 10 hours to actually really, really understand and start relishing and start meditating on them. Every single verse is so deep. So my humble request is, please read these purports of Srila Prabhupada and these verses. And if possible, try and memorize and recite some of these verses. Make songs on them, play it on guitar, somehow or other, make connection with them, somehow or other, get them into your existence. Even one verse, there is one verse which is so beautiful. It says, Tasmad ekena manasa bhagwan satavatam pati shrotavya kirtitavyascha dheya pujascha nitya. For a very long time, I thought that this verse should be sung and there should be YouTube videos in the complete professionalism of this verse. The verse is so beautiful. It says that therefore with one pointed attention, one should always hear about, glorify, worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That did first go, therefore with one point. Text 14. It says, therefore with one pointed attention, one should constantly hear about, glorify, remember, and worship the personality of Godhead, who is the protector of the devotees. So this 2.14, 2.13, they are extremely beautiful verses. But specifically 2.14 is like a conclusion that if you do this, that's perfection. Simply with one pointed attention. The problem is in the material world, we don't have one pointed focus. There is either a wife to be dealt with, or a boss to be dealt with, or a children or a daughter or someone else to be dealt with. But with all the things that are happening in the world, if we can just cultivate one pointed attention, if we want to hear this class, hear it with one pointed attention. In this class, think about Krishna. Don't think of anything else, work or anything else. Just hear and ask questions. The sign that you have heard something is when you have genuine questions that come up. Not necessary to ask artificial questions, but genuinely some questions might come up. And if the questions don't come up, then just ponder upon the topic. This process is called mananam, or recollection. You recollect what was being discussed in the class and you keep thinking about it. And the more you recollect in your day-to-day life is by reading these purports, reading this chapter. So every week we are discussing this chapter. It's amazing if you could read the chapter with its purports, because the purport has got the real secret in it. Then your mananam, then your recollection will be constant. And then by constantly recollecting, Krishna will say, oh, this person is actually spending time with me. Because in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has asked only two things. There is nothing else we can give to Krishna. We can only give two things. Do you know what are those two things? What are the two things you can actually give to Krishna and which Krishna asks of you explicitly?
Taking his name?
No.
Our love and our time.
Yes, time element is right. And love element is also right. But the further division of the love element is time and intelligence. You can't love someone without intelligence. When you love someone, you really apply your intelligence to love them. So Krishna has said that tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yuddhayacha, that at all times without gap, sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara, remember me and fight. He doesn't say go give up the whole world, don't do your jobs, don't pay your electricity bills. He says fight. And that is a very powerful statement. He says this in Bhagavad Gita, that at all times constantly remember me and do your duties and fight. Asmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yuddhecha mai arpito mano buddhir. Offer to me your mana, your mind, buddhi, your intelligence, and thus you lead your life. And in the entire Bhagavad Gita, this is the only place where Krishna asks for something. In Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam, he says, if they offer to me, I'll accept it. If they offer like this with devotion, I'll accept it. But in this verse, he's saying, give me your mind and intelligence. And to give someone mind and intelligence, you need to give them time. When you give them time, and this is what I'm trying to say, when you give Krishna time, then you will have recollection of Krishna. When you have recollection of Krishna, then the process of purification of the heart begins. It will be incomplete if you simply recollect and read but not serve. So simultaneously do some services with the devotees, for the devotees in the temple, serving the devotees. And by doing simply this much, you will become a saint, guaranteed. With that, I will stop my session today and open this floor up to questions.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. That was superb. We've got a comment first of all before I go to Buddha Mataji. And the comment, it's from Jessica Mataji. Would you like to ask it or shall I, Jessica Mataji? Do you want to ask?
Yeah, sure, no problem. I can ask. Hare Krishna. I was just wondering, how can one actually be able to distinguish between a saintly devotee? How can one find one and know that they're genuine?
And it's not easy. I must tell you, it's an extremely difficult thing. But fortunately, we have got like Bhagavad Gita, which is like an X-ray machine. Unfortunately, a lot of the people, they have read Bhagavad Gita many times, but they have not understood the essence of Bhagavad Gita. Like the core, and within the core, what's the real cream of Bhagavad Gita? And it's mentioned in the 17th chapter and the 18th chapter. And Krishna tells you the qualities. If you read the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, your hairs will stand on your end. Krishna starts by telling what kind of people he really loves. So, in 12th chapter, he says that one who doesn't envy anyone. That's the first quality he describes. And to become a devotee, and the same quality in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam will be repeated again. Parikshit Maharaj says that, oh my Lord, after these 7 days, if I may be killed or if I may be given a next birth, I don't expect anything, but I just want to be friendly with all living creatures. What he's saying is, I don't want to be envious of anyone. And that's the first quality that Krishna says, that Advesta Sarva Bhutanam. He's Advesh, no enviousness, no Dvesh, Sarva Bhutanam. Maitreya Karuna Evacha, friendly and compassionate to all living entities. Maitreya Karuna Evacha, Harsha Amarsha Bhayodvege, Same cha Mukto Ya Priyaha. So that such a liberated person is very dear to me. So you can read those verses of the 12th chapter. Then you can see the qualities which are described in the 17th chapter, which says that, that such a person doesn't take any intoxication, is in the mode of goodness. And then you can see people around you, and you will see who is constantly and consistently shining out those qualities. Consistently is very important, because you may also see devotees around you who are also projecting these qualities, but under certain circumstances these qualities are not so much prominent, and you might also see some negative qualities. But for the seer, they only see good. They don't see the bad. But if you find a person who is constantly projecting these qualities which Krishna has described in the 12th chapter, and you see their habits and their way of they see their livelihood, then that person is a saint. And that person is a candidate to to being a pure devotee. Those qualities which Krishna has mentioned in 12th chapter, they are very high in nature. They are not ordinary qualities. He's given a set of these verses that such a devotee is very dear to me, such a devotee is very dear to me, such a devotee is extremely dear to me. So this is how you find pure devotee. And pure devotee may not necessarily be only in saffron. Pure devotee, you might see, you know, in ISKCON community, you see many pure devotees. You will see many saintly persons in this community. I can personally say I've met with many saintly persons who might not be saffron clad, but I'm extremely eager to get their association because they are consistent in projection of these qualities which Krishna has mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. So, Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavad Gita is an X-ray. And before you start Srimad Bhagavatam, you should become, at least theoretically, Prabhupada writes, you should understand Bhagavad Gita and you should try to remember these portions of Bhagavad Gita. I must tell you, Bhagavatam is more easier to remember because Bhagavatam is mostly stories. Bhagavad Gita is more easier to by heart. The verses are more easier to by heart. But Bhagavad Gita forms the basis of Srimad Bhagavatam. And by reading Srimad Bhagavad Gita, you will know, guaranteed, how to discern between a pure devotee, an ordinary devotee, or a non-devotee, or you know, like even someone who is like a demoniac personality. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that was really beautifully explained. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Buddha Mataji, we haven't forgotten yourself. So if you want to unmute and ask your question.
No, it was the same question. Same
Okay.
question. Yeah.
All right. Okay. In the sense, if I can just continue from that though, now you may presume someone is a pure devotee in your heart, and if you have actually served them, but subsequently it transpires that they're not a pure devotee, how does that sort of work out in terms of, because you, in your mind, you've treated someone as a pure devotee, and that's so
yeah.
if you can answer that, please.
Yeah, sure. I'll try my best, although I'm not completely placed to answer this question, but this is why I said consistently. And this consistency is such a important feature, that someone who projects these qualities consistently. So that essentially also means that you have to observe some devotees over quite a few years of time. But unfortunately, in the modern day, no one has patience. Because we want to get initiated tomorrow, we want to have relationship with devotees, you know, ones who are in the news and the media tomorrow, because to us, you know, they're definitely pure devotees. And those who are never seen, never spoken about, never talked about, they are, you know, we don't see them, because saintly persons, you know, they don't like to be present out there. They are sometimes hiding, and most of the times, you know, at least saintly persons in our movement, they are forced to be not in hiding because Prabhupada in Bhagavatam has asked them to, you know, do the work of giving message to others. So it has happened in scriptures. It is said that if someone who is a very pure devotee of the Lord and then suddenly falls down or suddenly doesn't show such qualities, actually suddenly does some very negative things, then, you know, Krishna doesn't treat them as unsaintly. Krishna only sees them as temporary fall down. But unfortunately, we don't have vision of Krishna, you know, because we are in this material world with this material mind, and sometimes it cannot be broadened, it cannot be opened up because of the previous experiences we have gone. So at least expectation is we will respect the devotee. We might not want to learn from them so much, but the respect element should never go away. The moment the respect element goes away, we become equally liable, should I say, into you know, not cultivating devotional life. But that's why it's very important to see someone in devotional life through thick and thin, and then make conclusions, you know, because in the mind, when we come to ISKCON, then we think everyone is a pure devotee. because we think everyone is, and then they are also dressed very fancily sometimes, with all clothing, very saintly, very vibrant, very bright. And of course, you have to remember that the devotees who are also even practicing slightly in this path of devotional service, they get some effulgence because they're doing some austerities. So there is this layer of attraction which is there towards a lot of people because they are, they have been practicing devotional service. That doesn't mean that they become pure devotees. It just means that they are like, non-ripened mango. The example in the scripture is that the non-ripened mango is tomorrow going to become ripened mango. But right now they are non-ripened. So if you taste them immediately, it will not be so sweet. It might not be so palatable to your tongue at this point in time. But the biggest benefit is they are on their path. They will have to go through purification. And one day they will become ripened mango. And at that time, when you taste this ripened mango, the sweetness that you will get will also give immense clarity and purification to our own heart. And we'll feel, oh, wow, this is such a nice devotee. So the problem in your question is patience, judging devotees over a consistent period of time, and then having an expectation that no one is a pure devotee. We are all impure devotees because we are in this material world and our desires are not purified at this point in time. And hence, at least the Madhyam Adhikari, which I'm coining a term which I didn't discuss in this class, so my sincere apologies. There are 3 types of devotees: Kanishta, or the lower level of devotee; the Madhyam, the devotee in the middle stage of devotional life; and Uttam Adhikari, or the devotee who is very much advanced. So at least in the middle stage of life, we are careful. We have to be careful with who we deal with. Even the pure devotees, who we perceive as pure devotees, we deal with them carefully, because we ourselves have not developed the full vision to actually discern. If a saintly person is there, there is a saying that the world is a reflection of who we are. So, but because we have not developed the vision of purity and pureness, we don't have capacity to actually able to discern who is pure and who is not pure. But we will have some reflections of it because we are on this path. We'll get some reflection. We'll come to know, yes, this person is definitely pure. That person is not definitely pure. But anyone who is saffron clad by standard regulative etiquette principles, anyone who is saffron clad, meaning sannyasi, we should treat them as completely pure. Whatever their background has been, even if they have fallen down in the past, even if they are fallen down now, it is written, even if it's a Mayavadi sannyasi, you must pay obeisances to them. You must pay respects to them. So for a sannyasi, this is the standard of Srimad Bhagavatam, that because they have given up something in their life, whatever their end goal might be wrong, you must pay respects to them. Again, I don't know if I answered your question. Partially, maybe. I don't know.
Thank you, Prabhuji. I think Lisa Mataji's got a question as well. She's put up. Would you like to ask it, Lisa Mataji?
Yeah, which text details the anartha? I hope I have spelled that correctly. Yes, which text details the anarthas? I think it's a collection of the steps. It's actually in the text from 17 to 21. I think the Bhagavatam is describing about the stages of bhakti. So let me start from here. By regular attendance, so it's text 18. By regular attendance in Bhagavatam, in classes on Bhagavatam, and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So after that, you see that as soon as the revocable loving service is established, and the effects of nature's mode of passion, ignorance, such as lust, desire, hankering, disappear from the heart. So these verses from 18 to 21, they are telling you the progression. And the 21 says, thus the knot in the heart is pierced. This knot is actually the knot of anarthas. And all misgivings are cut to pieces. The chain of fruitive actions is terminated when one sees the self as the master. Certainly, therefore, since time immemorial, all transcendentalists have been rendering devotional service to Lord Krishna. So then the verses 22 further verses, they are telling that one should only worship Krishna and they should not worship demigods. But essentially from 18 onwards, it's mainly speaking about the Hriday Granthi. Hriday Granthi is the knot of the heart. And this knot is actually made up of these anarthas, because this is the most toughest stage to come out. Anarthas are the most longest and the toughest stage. It's not easy to give up one's anger. It's not easy to give up one's desires to enjoy material world. And therefore, this knot of the heart is specifically mentioning the anarthas. Does that answer your question, hopefully?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
And those things which I was mentioning to you about weakness of the heart and so, utsahamahi, ghanatarala, enthusiasm indicating pride, moving unsteadily between diligence and negligence, and flickering determination, and ongoing struggle with the sense pleasures, and inability to improve devotional practices, delighting in the material facilities that bhakti produces. These are all given by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, is one of the acharyas, and he defines these 6 anarthas in this way, the way that I described to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just finally ask you one more question, if that's okay.
Yes,
It's coming.
sure.
It's coming from our Facebook page, and I'm trying to get it all. There's quite a few sort of discussion points on the same sort of issues, I think, and it's surrounding demigods and the worshipping of demigods, in particular, Shiva, etc. So people, obviously look at the trilogy being Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva.
Yes.
And I believe that Shiva has his own planet in the spiritual world anyway. So I think what people are sort of saying is that why, which is the typical sort of question, why we're focusing so much on Krishna.
Yes.
Why are we not worshipping? Why are we said not to be worshipping demigods?
Demigods.
For example, Ganesh, we always put Ganesh in front when we're getting married, or if you buy something new, etc.
Yes.
So I think there is this sort of the notion of why are we specifically
Only Krishna.
Yes,
Just Krishna.
that's right.
Yes.
Okay. So if you could
yes, sure. Thank you. First and foremost, thank you for that question, whoever has asked this question, because it's definitely a sign of intelligence. Because me, myself, before coming to this moment, I was worshipping everyone. So Fridays, I would go to one temple. Monday, I was going to Lord Shiva temple. Saturdays, it was Lord Hanuman. And then there were so many others. And it took me quite some time to actually grasp and understand this concept from the core. So the reason Bhagavatam is mentioning not to worship any demigods is because, one, it doesn't want to cheat you. Bhagavatam is the only book in entire creation which will say the truth on your face and you will feel stripped naked down to your last bones. And Bhagavatam will not lie to you. There are so many facts in Srimad Bhagavatam which are very uncomfortable, but it will speak it out to you on your face. And the reason Bhagavatam is giving is Bhagavatam says that actually the supreme creator of the entire creation is Krishna. And from him comes 2 types of expansions. One are his immediate expansions, which are all called Vishnu Tattvas. So you must have heard of incarnations like Lord Ram, Balram, Narsinghadev, Varahadev, Matsya, Kurma. These are all direct expansions of the Supreme Lord, and they are unlimitedly powerful. Whereas the second category of expansions of the Lord are called parts and parcels. And within these parts and parcel category comes demigods. Demigods are limitedly powerful. And even beneath demigods are us. None of these demigods can actually give you liberation. A valid point is that yes, we worship Ganesha. Before starting anything, we worship Ganesha. But do you know really why? Has anyone read scriptures and understood why we worship Ganesha? If you read scriptures properly, you will understand that Ganesha actually gets his blessings from Lord Narsinghadev to remove obstacles from the life of a person. But Ganesha really wants to remove obstacles from your spiritual path. So if you really worship Ganesha and you are a pure devotee, well, you are a devotee of Ganesha, and if you worship Ganesha, then Ganesha will remove obstacles from your spiritual path. But people go to Ganesha for everything, right? He is actually the demigod of intelligence. If you go to him for intelligence, he can only give you that. He doesn't, for learning, you have to go to Saraswati. And for liberation, and that's what Krishna is for. Krishna, or the Supreme Personality, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All the others, they are not supreme. They have got limited powers. It's like going to a shopkeeper, if you have got £1 and you want to eat a chocolate, you go to a shopkeeper and you give the shopkeeper £1 and just take the chocolate, and the shopkeeper is not going to ask you whether your teeth is fine or not, whether there are like rotting things in your teeth, and chocolate would not really be good for your health. They don't care. They will just give to you. Similarly, all these demigods, they won't care if you do some austerities, if you do your upvas of Wednesdays or upvas of Thursdays, you have done some austerity. So there is this business dealing with the demigods. I'll do this for you, you do this for me. But if you reach a point in your devotional life where you don't have anything to ask from these demigods, and you say, oh no, I don't want anything from you, I just don't want it, I just wanted to worship you, then these demigods will give you intelligence to move higher in your spiritual journey. Krishna is not like that shop vendor. Even if you have £1, and even if Krishna has a chocolate and you ask chocolate of Krishna, you do a lot of austerities, Krishna might not give it to you, because Krishna, being the Supreme Lord, he knows that you will eat this chocolate and tomorrow you will have to go to dentist, because he can see past, present, and future. Some of the demigods, if you worship them properly and you want some of the things from them, they don't own any of these. This has been all given to them by Krishna. This is very clearly mentioned in all the scriptures, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, even in the Shivai Puran. If you read the Puranas of Shaivism sect, they say that Shiva was born out of Purusha. And Purusha is the word which Oxford University and many other universities, they will all discuss this word only, Purusha. And there are Purusha Shukta prayers, which we are going to read in Srimad Bhagavatam in 2nd Canto. So Lord Shiva is also born from this Purusha, and I'll soon send you a link which will explain the Shiva Tattva, which a discourse which I gave in Soho Temple just this Sunday. So anyone who wants to understand Shiva in more detail as to who is Lord Shiva, why he is there, who is Shambhu, who is Sadashiv, and all those things, then I'll send you a link which can be shared with you all. But in essence, Krishna, being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is not to be compared with demigods who have very limited energy, very limited power. Even the blessings that they give to you is after Krishna sanctions it. And Krishna says this in Bhagavad Gita. So, the demigods, if you ask something from them, they will look at your previous activities, your karma. And according to karma, if you're destined for something bad, if you're praying to these demigods very sincerely, at the best, the power they have got is to bring the good activity, results of your good activity, past good activities, which are there for you in the future, a little bit ahead, and give it to you now. Because you have worshipped them, you have done some austerity, and Krishna has instructed them, if someone worships you with sincerity and seriousness, then you must give them. This is the law of the nature. Why Krishna has done that? Because only when someone becomes sincere and serious, then they become stable, and in that stability, they can progress ahead in their devotional life. Hence, we in ISKCON, we don't worship demigods. And even when we use the term demigod, some people have problems, and because they think that all are gods. Unfortunately, sorry to say, not everyone is God. They are servants of God, just like in the, there is a prime minister in this country, and then there is a health minister, and then there is a minister for Department of Education, Learning. There are so many ministers. Like that, the Supreme Prime Minister is Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in his ministry, he has got health minister. He has got minister for learning, Mother Saraswati. He has got a minister for finance, Lakshmi Ji. He has got every kind of minister who covers all the areas of human existence and beyond. But someone is beyond all of these existences, and all these people who you want to pray, whether it be Ganesha or Lord Shiva, as you continue to read Srimad Bhagavatam with me, you will realize they are all offering prayers to the same Supreme Lord. in all of these places. And they're saying it categorically that if Supreme Lord is happy, then I will be pleased with you. Not only I will be pleased with you, every living and non-living entity will be pleased with you. This is category said by Lord Shiva when he was drinking poison. So the point is that these demigods are themselves mentioning that I'm not the supreme. Brahma is saying it again and again. He has at least 10 different beautiful prayers in Srimad Bhagavatam where he is worshipping the Supreme Lord himself directly. Hence, we devotees of ISKCON, we don't go by whimsical faiths. We don't go by traditional faiths. We go by authenticity. Something which is called authenticity is verified over many decades by all the previous teachers and acharya, spiritual master in line of disciplic succession. And we follow these scriptures as it is. We will not introduce anything from our own side. We will not, and this is what has happened over a long period of time. There is no such personality as Santoshi Mata. But I'll tell you, there are huge temples in India of Santoshi Mata. Someone dreamt of this divine personality, and then they just advertise it so nicely that, in India, everyone started to accept it. It exists. And I personally have visited the temple, and I was praying to the Santoshi Mata for many years only to read it myself that such personality doesn't exist. Then there are many other personalities which do not exist. Now, should we say the truth or should we hide the truth? We will say only what the scriptures are saying to us. We will not say something wrong because we are postmen. We have to say it as it is. The moment I introduce something into the whole discourse, that means my session is no longer powerful. The potency for you all to transform after hearing from me is lost, because I have said something which is not there in the scriptures, if that makes sense. So scriptures say this very categorically. Demigods are limited, and you name those famous demigods that you love. My mother had for a long time, and even my sisters had for a long time, difficulty in removing these demigods from their altars because they have been worshipping them for many years. And I told them that there is no need. But you have to, keep Krishna in your altar and understand in your mind that Krishna is the supreme and they are all subservient to Krishna. If you understand simple philosophy, this much only, Krishna says that you are Mahatma. In Bhagavad Gita, he says you are Mahatma. You are a great soul. Mahatma means a great soul. If you understand this simple basic, is that Supreme Lord is Supreme Lord and demigods are demigods, and the demigods cannot become Supreme Lord. So unfortunately, we won't tell you lies to make you happy or make you my follower or their follower. We will have to tell the truth and present the scriptures as it is. So my sincere apology if that didn't please you and that's not what you wanted to hear.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you for giving such a wonderful class.